Welcome in, everyone, for another live episode of the HawksZone Rundown Podcast. Today's a kind of a unique one. We're going to do a little thing about the all-time favorite Seahawks plays of myself and Dan Viens. And it kind of ties into this 50th year anniversary that everything's going on with the Seahawks for that and all the historic things that we'll probably see throughout the season. So we figured, you know what, might as well give you guys kind of a preview of some of our favorite moments in Seahawk history. As well, we want you guys in the chat to jump in and give us your favorite moments as well if there's one that we didn't think of. So make sure you guys are active in the chat today, and don't forget, subscribe, click that notification bar, and you can always find our work here at HawksZone Rundown over at Field Goals. But right after this, we'll get into it.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me!
Yeah, let's go. It's go time, baby.
Here comes Gino, steps up, takes that shot to the end zone. It is Metcalf, 20.
I'm just about that action, boss.
You about to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Off me.
Nobody in the world can do that.
Are you kidding me? Trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Jackson Smith is jigged on. The circus gives it close in. Throw it with Baldwin. Oh my goodness, he caught it. By Leonard Williams.
This is the HawksZone Rundown with your hosts, Ryan and Bryce.
Well, Dan, welcome back to the HawksZone Rundown. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been a minute. We are definitely in the dog days of the off season, but it gives us a chance to talk about some of this stuff. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to do this, and I couldn't think of anyone else I'd want to do it with that has, you know, the history that you do with watching the Seahawks and basically when they started all the way up to now.
That's a very nice way to say that I'm really old.
Yeah, it kind of is, but I appreciate that because it's going to help a lot with this today. So, so basically, like we kind of, mentioned at the beginning of this, it's going to be favorite all-time Seahawk plays. So obviously we know that this year's the 50th season of the Seattle Seahawks. And there's different things that the organization's doing, but I figured, since it is that lovely dog day of time for us as content creators, why not go into something kind of fun like this? It should be engaging with our fans and listeners, as well as for us to think back on some of the moments for us. And so one thing, you and me both talked about when we did this was, let's not research. Let's just pull our top 10 plays that stick out in our head immediately when we think about all-time Seahawk plays.
Yeah, because that's how it should be. When you gave me this idea, I thought, okay, is this what would the viewers appreciate the most? Should we really try to come up with the objective, like universally agreed upon top 10 plays, most important plays in Seahawks history now? So I really, without looking at my phone, without looking at a computer or anything, just tried to, other than opening up a Word file, and just start jotting down ideas, the first things that came to mind. Interestingly enough, especially given a little bit of the difference in our timelines, a lot of crossover, a lot of agreement in some of our lists. So, and a lot of these too, I think actually every single one of them are plays that I either watched live in the stadium if they were at a home game or on television. So that's why the memories are so ingrained and burned in there.
Yeah, and so that was the kind of the cool thing was the crossover, and even some of the ones that, we both had on our list that weren't on the other person's list. And there's a few of those that the listeners will get to see and the viewers will get to see. So with that being said, Dan, let's start with your list and what you came up with as your Seahawk favorite plays. So guys, as you can see on the screen here, this is Dan's all-time plays list that came to him right off the top. And so the first one we got, guys, obviously is the tip.
Yeah, anytime a play has a name, like it's important, and this will forever be known as the tip. And one of my great regrets, and the next time that I'm in a situation where I can set up a physical background for my show, is I gotta have a picture of that. That's one thing I do not have in my collection. So, but I had a great vantage point at that one from the stadium where my seats are. It happened just in the corner. I'm in section 324, just right below. Our seats are above the tunnel, which is right there in that corner. And so got to see the play unfolding, as Kaepernick let the ball go. And then also got to see Richard peel off on the sideline with Aaron Andrews. And even from standing up there amidst all the craziness was like, what the hell is he doing? But that was a moment that I don't think will ever be replicated, because in that moment, seeing it live, it was an awesome play. It was an incredible athletic play, and really kind of summed up Richard Sherman's skill set, I think, and helped cement his legacy. But also just that realization as a fan in the stadium that, like, we're going to the Super Bowl. We'd been there before, but like, we're going to the Super Bowl and we might be the best. We just beat the other team that probably had the best chance to match up against us. We might be the best team in football. This could actually happen. And that's a memory I'll never forget.
The thing for me too, when you think of that play, and I remember watching it live because I was actually at the stadium at the time and watching that live, the cool point for me on it was, just the emotional, like, exuberance from the stands, like you said, and the fans that, this team that had kind of been our thorn in our side, and when everyone knew we were going to have to play them to get to the Super Bowl, we knew it might be our toughest game going into it. And to win it on a play where you tested what we had, come to know as one of the top defenses in the NFL, or at that point ascending to be that legendary defense, is just such an iconic play. And then obviously the aftermath following that play with Richard Sherman and Crabtree, and everything that kind of, Sherman's, never talk about me kind of whole thing.
Yeah.
It just kind of, that moment really felt like that was the moment the Legion of Boom became what they were going to be for the next 4 to 5 years.
And it was such a great game. Like, I one of these days I need to go back and watch the whole thing from start to finish. Didn't start off great. If memory serves me correct, I think we were down 10-0, like, early. And then it kind of was a back and forth. And then Kaepernick with one of the greatest athletic touchdown throws I think I've ever seen. If you remember the one where he was kind of on the move, kind of threw off his wrong foot, tight window in the end zone, sort of everything that sort of represented his skill set and what he could do to you. But I remember in that moment, as he let go of the ball, intending to throw it to Crabtree, I remember feeling pretty calm in the moment because I could see the play developing. It was coming at me. And I thought, at worst, he knocks this away. I didn't, the fact that it ended up being intercepted was great, but he was in such perfect position, played the play perfectly. I just didn't feel like the throw had a chance, even though it was, as well placed as it could be, I suppose is how you could put that. Just a surreal moment. One of those that feels like it happened in slow motion. And I don't know if this will happen for all 10 plays, but at least the first one got goosebumps. So.
Yeah, no, the other thing for me on that is watching the 49ers lose 2 straight crucial games in back-to-back years on a Kaepernick fade to Crabtree. Not exactly the best way to go about it, but yeah, no, for me, that's definitely an iconic one. So what I'm thinking we'll do, Dan, is we'll just read off the rest of your list here. So we've got the Super Bowl safety. We've got Matt Hasselbeck sliding TD run. We've got Beastquake 1 and Beastquake 2.0.
Yeah.
Russell to Tyler versus the Rams for the toe touch in the back of the end zone. Richard Sherman's pick 6 in that same season versus Houston, which helped bring that team back in that game. Steve Largent's revenge hit on Mike Harden, and Jermaine Kearse's TD versus Green Bay in overtime in the NFC Championship game. And finally, the Fail Mary. And honestly, Dan, I love your list. Those are some great moments throughout Seahawk history. And, I think as we go through this and we bring up the images, I think, it'll bring back a lot of memories for those fans at that particular moment. So I'm going to put up my list now and we can see a little bit of the crossover. So on my list, I have Beastquake in the tip as well. I have Cam Chancellor's hit on Demaryius Thomas in the Super Bowl, which for me was one of the most iconic moments in that game. I also have Steve Largent's revenge hit on Mike Harden. I also have Dave Craig to Steve Largent in 1983 versus the Miami Dolphins to get to the AFC Championship game, which obviously Kurt Warner punched the ball in from like the 2-yard line after that. And that was Largent's only other, target in that game because he only had one catch up that point up for 16 yards. So that was a pretty crucial moment there. I've got Cam Chancellor's fumble forcing hit when he knocked Vernon Davis and really brought the boom in that rain game in 2012. Mm-hmm. And then Russell Wilson's slide and pass to Tyler in Minnesota. Cam Chancellor's punch out versus the Lions after he came back from his holdout. Tony Romo's fumbled field goal snap in the 07, I believe it was, or 06 wildcard game. And then finally, I also have Matt Hasselbeck's touchdown run versus the Redskins. So let's take a look at the punch out here, Dan. And this is one I think that, probably doesn't get as much love as it deserves. But for that team at that point in the season, if they lost that game, I'm pretty sure they would have started the season 0-3 at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it was his first game back. He held out the first two. I remember one of those games was in Green Bay, and they started out 0-2. Yeah. And was that the same? Is that the same play that then the ball bounced in the end zone and then
KJ Wright taps it? Yes.
It should have been a penalty.
Yep.
Yeah, illegal batting should have been the call.
Yep.
It was a big controversy, and of course, the Seahawks were a key. I think that was, and you said that was the same year as a Hail Mary or the Fail Mary.
No, those were two different years. Okay. Yeah,
because people started to call us the cheat Hawks, and there were moments like that certainly played into that. Cam was it's cool that even there's some crossover in our list with plays that aren't exact. There are some of those, like the Matt Hasselbeck touchdown run against the Redskins. I don't think many fans would have that on their top 10. It was I just remember, and we're going to show the picture in a little bit, but it's just such an iconic moment and really put us ahead to stay in that game. But we both have a play from Cam Chancellor in a game that really, was meaningful in the moment, but not iconic, memorable moments for a lot of fans. And then we both have a play from the Super Bowl win that isn't a scoring play. Like all the touchdowns that were scored and obviously Percy Harvin's, opening kickoff and the pick six from Malcolm Smith. And there's so much to choose from there. And we both picked plays that we thought set the tone. For me, it was the safety right off the bat, first play. And for you, it was the hit on Demaryius Thomas, after which Demaryius Thomas didn't want anything to do with the middle of the field in that game.
Yeah, and so speaking of that, let's bring that one up. The knockout graphic, or I call it the Super Bowl knockout. This, to me, outside of the safety, was the moment the Denver Broncos offense ceased to exist in this football game. Because I think up to this point, it was only 8-0 or something like that for us at that point. We weren't really rolling on all cylinders, and they ran this underneath play, and Cam knocked Demaryius Thomas about 5 yards backwards. And at that moment, I kind of knew I was like, the defense is about to go off, and the pass rush was going to go after Peyton, and it was going to be lights out for Denver. I didn't think it would turn out to be a 43-8 score,
right?
But I knew at that point that the defense had kind of finally settled in, and they were about to just go full throttle on the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, if there was going to be any opportunity for the Broncos to get some momentum back on their side, and remember, they came into that game as the most prolific offense we've ever seen. Right. And so, it starts off poorly for him on the bad snap, which is on my list. And then this one really did set a tone and send a message. And I like that picture too, because you got Byron Maxwell kind of creeping up from behind. It's almost like when you read his body language and look on his face, like, oh, damn, like
this is over.
Thomas is about to get laid out. He knew it was coming.
Yeah, no, that one for me, and just how Cam even reacted after and how Earl did by jumping on him, like it just completely brought energy to that entire team. So the next one I've got on here is another big hit against the Denver Broncos. And this one, Dan, you can speak to better than I can, but I've seen VHS videos of it. I've seen it obviously on YouTube, but the hit that Steve Largent laid on Mike Harden after Mike Harden's relatively cheap shot he gave to Steve earlier in the year, this is such an iconic moment for Steve Largent in his career.
Yeah, and I think they did. They featured it really heavily. I can't remember if it was a full, like a Football Life treatment where the NFL Network did a sort of a 30 for 30 documentary on Largent, and they gave a good chunk of that show to this storyline. But it was the season opener in Denver when Harden laid Largent out on an interception, right? And caught. Is that how it happened? Now I'm having a hard time remembering the first one. But regardless, Harden laid out Largent, blindside hit. It was borderline illegal. I don't think it was flagged at the time. If anyone in the comments remembers more details than I'm giving on that one, but it was just, then later that we get him again, second time. We were back in the AFC West in those days, in case some of you are wondering, wait a minute, why do we play the Broncos twice? And you could not have scripted it any better. And what made that play so impactful wasn't just that it was revenge and it was Harden getting his due, but Largent was like the last guy that you would ever expect to do something that physical. Like, that just wasn't his game. He was 5'10", 180 pounds, soaking wet. Like that just wasn't part of his game. But it was just an iconic moment in an iconic career. Talked about it last week when I did my Mount Rushmore. Like, to me, Steve Largent is and always will be the greatest player in Seahawks history. When he retired, he held every single meaningful wide, receiving record that there was. And those have all since been blown away with the proliferation of offense being what it is the last 20 years. But then you add that moment into it, and which seemed so out of character for him, and it just made it all the more exciting for fans.
For me, it was one of my first introductions to Steve Largent was actually that play. It was that play and the one where you see him going up the sideline and stretching out and making this diving catch.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember who it was against, but
Raiders.
I remember watching that and thinking to myself,
rode the DB into the end zone.
Exactly. Yeah. And for me, like, when I think, of that as being kind of the first introduction for me to Steve Largent was the hit and that catch. He was immediately one of my favorite players, even though I never got to watch him live and in person. Just going back and then getting as much content as I could. I have a Steve Largent jersey, and I will always have a Steve Largent jersey, no matter how long I'm alive and a Seahawks fan. I will always have a Steve Largent jersey. And so we'll do one more of Steve's plays, and this one stood out for me, which, is a big one, and that's Steve's big catch in 83.
Yeah.
So this one helped seal the victory for the Hawks, over the Miami Dolphins in that divisional round game and get them their first playoff victory to get to the conference championship game against the Raiders, which they ultimately didn't succeed. But up until this catch, Steve had one catch for 16 yards in that game. The Dolphins the entire day had bracketed him with a safety over top. And then on this particular play, he runs this unbelievable corner route and gets right in behind the corner and right in front of the safety. And Dave Craig just puts a great ball right on Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I remember, he tiptoed into the pylon a little bit to get inside it. Really sort of summarized everything about his skill set and just his body control and the way he was able to run routes. And that's how he was able to overcome, average athleticism and size and excel at that position. That was a great moment watching that on TV. It was the first memory I have as a Seahawks fan of like, oh, we get to have nice things too. Like we just won a playoff game. Like, we might go to the Super Bowl, at the time, as you mentioned, they lost the next week to the Raiders, but no, it was a great moment. And I think it was preceded, right before that, Kurt Warner got him close. Kind of bounced a run outside. That was a tough, low-scoring game up until that point.
Yeah, no, and it was great. And guys, I'm going to say one thing right now. I'm watching the chat here. Let's keep the comments on the content that's being produced in this chat. I know there's some other comments going on in there, and I appreciate that everyone's got their opinion on things. But if it's not focused in what this is about or the Seahawks currently right now, leave it out. Have your own private messages on the side, please. Like, this show is about, what we're doing right now. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So the next one, Dan, let's talk about the Minnesota Miracle. So Russ's slide scoop, find Tyler Lockett in the freezing cold that was Minnesota that day because they were getting their stadium rebuilt. But I remember when I saw that snap go over Russ's head, and I was like, oh, we're in trouble. We're in so much trouble right now.
And that was one that was fun. This is why I'm glad we each did a list, because that was one that wasn't in my consciousness, but I did, after I put my list together, I was like, there's something missing here. And it was a Russ moment, and that's when the Tyler Lockett throw that we're going to talk about in a minute kind of came into view. Cause I was like, there were certain players that had to be represented on this list that initially didn't pop into my head. And that was certainly one of them. And so I was glad you put that one on there. We also talked about like, God, there isn't a play from Earl Thomas anywhere on this list, right? Like, where do we come up with that? So maybe the viewers have a couple ideas over in the comments, but we thought of one. We'll see if somebody comes up with it first, but it was tough to represent everybody on this list.
Yeah, it really was, because there's a lot of different, trying to go through the entirety of the 50 years of Seattle and think of all these different moments. But let's go to one that we both said that was on both of our lists, and that's this one, which I think is an underrated play in Seahawk history.
Yeah, and we both had it on our list, and this is my favorite, my favorite play on the list because of that. Like, I don't think, I'd be interested to get some comments from the people over in the chat. Like, I don't think this would be on most people's on the forefront of their mind, but it happened in the 2006 divisional playoffs, January 14th. I wanted to look this up, make sure I had this right. 9:43 left in the third quarter. The Redskins were up 13-7, and this put him ahead to stay. He dropped back to pass. Nothing was there really, and he did it on his own. It was raining. You can't see it in this picture, but when he slid, it kind of kicked up some of the water. It just was such an iconic moment. And the fun thing about this for me is this happened in the opposite corner of the stadium as the tip. So the northeast corner where the Hawks nest is, that's when this happened. That's where my seats were at that time. And then I flipped them over to the other side later on. And so this one was coming right at me. I used to always take my binoculars back in those days and watch a lot of the game through the binoculars. And so this is a memory that stuck in my head, and it was a cool moment at a time when this, Mike Holmgren was trying to build this team into something special. And I don't know why it sticks in my head, but it obviously stuck in yours too.
So for me, this was like the week of this, I got my Matt Hasselbeck jersey. My first Matt Hasselbeck jersey, I got the blue one. And I was watching this game at home, and it was ironic because I watched it, and the reason it stood out to me as a kid was I have those same cleats. I was wearing the same style of cleat Matt Hasselbeck was wearing, and I thought, oh, this is great. Quarterback I like's wearing the same cleats and everything. And the other thing that's really interesting about this photo is, I know, Dan, you asked me off air who was the guy that missed that tackle. Do you know who that is?
That's not Sean Taylor, is it?
It's Sean Springs.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
It is Sean Springs that misses that tackle on Matt Hasselbeck as he goes into the end zone there. And, just this moment, I think as well for Matt, it really kind of signified his, ascension to being the guy that can get it done without Sean Alexander, because at that point in his tenure with Seattle, he had kind of gone through that up and down point, really got the job in 2004. But it was still very much, hey, this was Sean's MVP season. This is the year we went to this first Super Bowl, and Sean got knocked out of this game with a concussion, and it was like, oh gosh, there goes our offense. We're in trouble. Mo Morris and Max Strong were taking the lead with the running game, and Matt was able to, in a game that was not ideal conditions for passing, find a way to get the Seahawks the win and get us onto that next game in the NFC Championship versus Carolina.
Yeah, and people forget how mobile he was. He made a lot of plays with his feet.
Yeah, he did. He, to me, still has some of the best pocket presence and footwork I've ever seen on a quarterback to this day. So
I think you and I have both talked about how he might serve as a fairly accurate comp for Sam Darnold. I think there's some similarities in their play style. And that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you on that. And so let's go to one of a Seahawk who's no longer on our team this year and will be playing down in Tennessee, but one that made so many of these catches. The iconic toe tap versus the Rams. And I believe this was one of the few times we beat a McVay team in Seattle, because at this point, normally the Rams came up here and used to just give it to us.
Yeah.
And this was the game where Tedrick Thompson ended up making the interception that still I can't believe he made that pick, and that was one of his, if not only, good play as a Seahawks safety. Yeah. But this play with Aaron Donald breathing down Russ's neck as he's rolling to his left, I thought Russ was throwing this ball away. But where he put that, and the fact that safety is Eric Weddle, who is a consistent Pro Bowler and all-pro level safety, that just makes this so much more impressive how Tyler was able to control his body and make that catch.
Yeah, and it's anyone who hates the action green uniforms, like this memory alone should take a little bit of an edge off of that. I don't know what's more incredible, the fact that he caught this ball or the fact that Russ got it there. Like, it's one of those, and there's another play we're going to talk about that I feel this way about as well, where no matter how many times you watch the replay over and over and over again, you can't believe that this is a completion, even though you've seen it and you know it's a completion. Like, just a real prototypical example of Russ's ability to get the ball up and down. And, it looked like he was throwing it away. There was no chance for Tyler to catch that ball. He put it in the only place that you could put it without it being knocked away, because the defender was in great position. And there aren't many guys in the league that could catch it the way that Tyler did on that play. Just absolutely phenomenal. Any highlight reel of either Tyler or Russell's best plays in their career that doesn't include that just are invalid, in my opinion.
Totally agree. And so let's carry on with another ex-Seahawk, and probably the play that comes to most people's forefront, the original Beastquake with Marshawn versus the Saints. This, to me, like, obviously you can't say much more than you literally shook the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the thing about it for me was, it was just, we had no business, in most people's mind, being in the playoffs because we had a losing record that year.
Yep.
And then on top of that, hosting a game against the team that just had won the Super Bowl the year prior. We were supposed to get lambasted in that game. And I remember it was the first time you could feel Pete's always compete mantra really drive home in a team's mentality in a game.
Yeah, and oddly enough too, everybody remembers that game for the Beastquake run, but Matt Hasselbeck had one of the best games of his career that day. He was unbelievable. My vantage point from that one was pretty interesting because we were still in the seats that we were for the Matt Hasselbeck run, so northeast corner. So that play was going away from me. And, some people may forget this. All we needed was a first down, and we were going to be able to milk the clock and ice this game. Did not need to score there. And so from my vantage point, I see him disappear into the line because we're behind the line of scrimmage, watching him run away from us. And he just kind of disappeared into there. And then you get the feeling right away that, like, I think we have the first down. And the crowd, it didn't just instantly, it wasn't like flipping a switch. It was in phases. It was like, oh man, he's still on his feet. Oh man, he's got the first down. Oh, he's broken free. So it just kept kind of leveling up throughout the play. And then just, unbelievable bow on that gift for us. And then, the way he finished it out, iconic, and just a precursor to the sequel, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, no, exactly. And let's get to that sequel of this, and Beastquake 2.0. This one to me was even more impressive at the time. Not saying that the one he did in New Orleans wasn't, but how he tightrope that sideline. I thought he stepped out of bounds at like 3 different points. Watching him run, I was like, okay, Marshawn stepped out. They're going to blow up. Hey, he's still going. He's still going. And then watching Patrick Peterson try and chase him down. And eventually you see Ricardo Lockett there just running with him. Like, this was another, just his contact balance for a running back was unbelievable. And I don't know if there's been a back since that has a similar set of skills as Marshawn.
Was this a Thursday night game or a Sunday night game?
Sunday night game.
Yeah. I remember watching it live and just thinking in the moment, like, are we seeing this again? It struck me while it was happening how similar it was. And then I'm sure you've seen like the split screen, right? Where they've synced it up. It's remarkable. Like, people say that the first Beastquake run was one of the great runs in NFL history. I don't know how you do a top 10 if you're going to put that first one in there, because of context, right? It happened in the playoffs and they advanced, but that second one's right up there too. He might have 2 of the top 10 runs in NFL history.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Definitely has some of the top runs in NFL history.
Cool, suggestions.
Yeah, there's some in here that I'm starring that we'll talk about, after we get through this. But here's another one from that era of Seattle Seahawks football, which is the OT catch by Jermaine Kearse, which
Yes.
that day for him and Russ is probably their worst days of their careers, respectively. Like, Kearse had so many passes go off his hands. And, there was the one that went off his hands and Clinton Dix picked it off. There was, Russ's 4 or 5 interceptions. I can't remember what it was. I think it was 4 interceptions in that game. And just, we couldn't get anything going. But that defense, as beat up as it was, because you had Sherm, who had messed up his elbow at one point. You had Earl that was playing with a bad shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they still had held that Packers team to only 19 points. And the offense finally got going. And again, it was Marshawn on a couple different plays that made a big difference to get it going. But then it was this where they decided they were going to bring the heat on Russ in overtime. And Jermaine just ran a post and has Tremont Williams just draped all over him.
Yeah.
And comes down with the catch.
A couple memories for me. One, it was an absolutely beautiful January day in Seattle. Like, you cannot have a nicer day, at least not until the action started in the first half. And, every pass Russ threw, it seemed like bounced off someone's hands into the opposition's hands. But this is one where I have to make a confession. And this happened 3 times. And we're going to talk about another one here in a little bit, where the woman I was married to at the time was, she would go to the games with me. She was into it, but not passionate about it. And so as games got towards the end, she was always more concerned with beating traffic, right? And this game seemed like it was over. Felt like it was over late in the game when they kicked the field goal, right? And so that's what we did. We got it from our seats and we went downstairs. And when we got down to the 100 level, we're walking out, just about to walk into the WAMU Convention Center, right? The last concession stand that's right there. And they weren't serving anything anymore, but they've got the monitors up, right? And that's when we recovered the onside kick. And so I thought, God dang it. Well, we can't go back into the stadium, right? They won't let you just stand in there. So I watched that play happen on a freaking TV monitor at a concession stand in the stadium instead of from my seats. I wasn't the only one. There was about 15 people around. And so as he hauled in that catch, strangers hugging each other. We're going back to the Super Bowl. Oh my God, I can't believe it, because, half an hour before that, sure felt like the run was over.
Yeah, no. And watching that game, it was a game where I felt, okay, our luck has finally run out, because that entire season we started hot. Then we hit that slide. We traded Percy Harvin away. There was a lot of turmoil with that team, it felt like, throughout that season. And then they finally started to gel as the season got closer to the end. And they went on that bit of that run there where you had Beastquake 2.0 and you had a bunch of these different things occur. And then you obviously, go through the playoffs and they steamroll the Carolina Panthers like it was nothing. And then we're playing this team, Green Bay, who we had beat pretty bad opening day. And it just, for me, I was sitting there and I went, as soon as Matthews caught that onside kick, I went, we've got momentum. I think we're going to win this game.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then, we know the story now, but, that particular play was one that they had worked on really hard all week in practice. And in that one moment, they got the exact coverage that they were looking for. Wilson made the little motion to Kearse. And, it's not often that you see a game like that decided on just a straight post pattern, right? But just perfect execution, and another example of Russ just putting the ball right on the money.
So let's get to our next one here. And I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to go with the one shoe interception by Richard Sherman. This one to me was interesting because for that 2013 team, this game in particular was a back and forth game. JJ Watt had the bloody nose. He was all over Russ. Marshawn was having a good day, but we still were struggling to get the offense really going. And they needed to convert. And Sherm reads this perfectly with Cam coming off the edge on that blitz, steps in front of Owen Daniels and takes that back for 6 and kind of changes the whole outcome of that game. But the thing that's interesting now that we know is that they knew that play was coming in that particular situation because they had practiced it for weeks.
Yeah, I just saw something about this recently, and I can't remember which of the other defenders was talking about this, but just that they read that play, they knew it, they had practiced against it so many times during the week, and every single time, if I remember the story correctly, that the scout team ran this against first team defense, Rich picked it off every time, and he did it in this game. He lost his shoe, as you mentioned, and I remember watching this one on TV live. And this was back. This is one of those moments I want to remember, because the older I get, the more cynical I get. There are times where late in the game, things aren't going your way. It's easy to think, it's just easy to think, well, this one's over. We can't pull this out. But this was more in a time where it was like anything's possible. Never give up. Great example of it. One of the moments I'll always remember from Matt Schaub's career, as if there weren't many. Just unbelievable play, and they obviously end up winning the game in overtime.
All right, so let's move on to another one. And Dan, this was one for you. Super Bowl safety.
Yeah, you picked the hit on Demaryius Thomas. Rest in peace, by the way. I meant to mention that earlier. But to me, and again, it's funny that we both picked plays that weren't scoring plays. It just right off the bat, they come in, all the hype was on the Broncos. A lot of the experts were picking them to roll us. One of the most prolific offenses, the highest scoring offense in history up until that point. Loaded with weapons. Peyton Manning, coming back off the injury and having a reclamation year. And just right off the bat, they just looked so confused in that moment because of what the Seahawks were doing pre-snap, and then just they obviously didn't feel really comfortable settling in, and then that ball goes over Manning's head, and there's a safety to begin with, and then our offense gets the ball back. I just thought right off the bat that sent a message. If coming into this game, the Broncos felt like they were going to roll us, they didn't feel that way after this play. And I just that's the one that I chose, but yours set a tone too. And then it's like we forget all the guys that scored touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And, Kearse obviously had a touchdown. Baldwin had his, Malcolm Smith, the pressure that was applied by that defense. The thing for me with this was listening to Peyton on the sidelines in the mic'd up period being like, and him in the center basically saying, I couldn't hear you. And it's Super Bowl supposed to be a neutral site. And the biggest thing that came out of that was it felt like it was a 12's home game. Like it was so loud in Seattle's favor in that game that it just kind of set that avalanche in motion.
Yeah.
So the next one I've got here that I'll bring up is Cam versus Cam crime. And this was part of that, Carolina playoff game where Seattle completely steamrolled them. But at this point in the game, it was still relatively close. And Cam Newton tried to force a ball into a flat route that he came to way late in his progression. And Chancellor just picked it, and there was no stopping him. He was gone. And his touchdown celebration in that was great because it was his, signature hammer to wood type of mentality. And it's one of my iconic moments is watching him just run down Seattle sideline and start celebrating at about the 15-yard line. It was great.
Yeah, and this is one that, as I see some of the other suggestions, I'm like, well, maybe I would have gone with that one. But again, I wanted to choose this list just based off pure memory, right? And what popped into my head. And this was one of those moments that stood out to me. This was the game that advanced them to the NFC Championship game, led to the Kearse catch. Incidentally, I watched it standing in the exact same spot that I did on the final play of Super Bowl 49. It was the place I worked at the time, and fortunately, it was a place where I got to watch every minute of every Seahawks game, even while I was working. So I got paid to watch this play, by the way. But just also, Cam in his career, known as the big hitter, I don't know that he's ever really gotten enough credit for his coverage ability and how much of an all-round safety he really could be. And this is a great example of that. Read the play perfectly and then just outran everybody 90 yards to seal the 31-17 win against Cam, as you said.
And so speaking of Cam, the one thing you and me talked about was he has a lot of the iconic plays for that era in a lot of respects, outside of Sherman, obviously, but this one, Cam lays the boom. This, to me, really signified the violent nature of this defense was this hit in 2012 where Vernon Davis was going up the sideline and it was pouring rain. And at that point earlier in the year, we kind of went to, Candlestick, lost to the 49ers. Everyone had anointed them. They were going to win the NFC West at this point. This game was just going to be another kind of, we needed to prove we belonged. And we ended up beating them like badly in this game in the pouring rain. Sherm had the return on the blocked field goal attempt. Yep. It truly was just a tone-setting game that this rivalry was really going to take off. But this hit in particular, I think this changed some of Vernon Davis's career in to a point, because he was never the same after this. Really, he wasn't the same kind of tight end that he had been prior in his career.
Yeah, no, this is one of those highlight reel moments for Cam. And, I've heard it described as Vernon Davis's soul left his body on that play. I'm not sure he was ever the same player after that. But just, and unfortunately, that's a play that if it happened today, even though it was a completely legal hit, probably would have been flagged, right? But just one that sticks in the memory bank for sure.
Okay, and I'm kind of tired of this. Sorry, Dan, but guys, there are guys in this comment that are going off on a topic that has nothing to do with what we're discussing. And I'm sorry, but I'm done looking at it. And from now on, I'm going to make this very clear to everybody in this chat. If this is going to start becoming attacks on people and stuff about stuff that has nothing to do with this channel, you're getting banned from this chat. And I'm going to do that again right now. I've already done it to one individual, and I will do it to another. Keep the content and conversation on what we're talking about. Anything else, take it off in your private life. We're not here for that. Sorry, Dan. I couldn't keep seeing it come up in the chat, and it was driving me nuts. So
it's so much ado about nothing.
Yeah. So, all right. So the last play we've got, or two plays we've got left in here, Dan, of our all-time favorites.
I mean, how can you not? Right? First of all, let me ask you this. Was it a catch?
That's a good question. I could never really come to a consensus on what that was, because the rule had always been tie goes to the offense. If they both catch at the same time, tie goes to the offense. But there was never really a good angle, to me at least, that showed who caught it cleanly first. And if Tate came on second or the defensive back came on second from Green Bay. I personally think once they got to the ground, I think the Green Bay player got away, because there was a point you could see Golden try and turn himself back into it. But this is where they got in trouble with having, non-league officials officiate.
That was it. It ended the strike. That was enough. The league had enough. There was so much backlash from that. And I think the ref that with his arms up there even wrote a book about it, right? Didn't he? It's one that I've watched a million times, and the DB had control of it first, then Golden had control of it. It's just a question of like what determines the end of the play, right? The official end of the play. All I know is it was an amazing moment to witness live. It was a huge win at the time, because obviously it's a team trying to become something, right? And that was Russ's rookie year. We end up making the playoffs. We lose to the Falcons, and then it was on, right? They knew that we were building something, and that was a huge moment towards that. That is one of the other plays. I watched this play happen from the exact same TV monitor at the exact same concession stand at that southwest corner of the stadium, because someone wanted to leave early and get a beat on traffic. And so the other one was, I don't know if you remember this game. I don't remember what year it was. It was probably 15 or 16, Houston Texans. And it was a last minute drive where Russ just marched right down the field, touchdown to Jimmy Graham. It was like a 3-play drive, just went bam, bam, bam.
Oh, the Texans game. Was it the Texans game?
Yeah. It was a game where, Watson started off the game with a bomb to Brandon Cooks, I think, beat Earl Thomas. We were kind of playing from behind the whole game. So that was another one. Those are the three, but two of the most iconic moments in Seahawks history. And I watched them. I think about that every time I walk by that concession stand, by the way.
Well, that's always a good thing, because then you'll know, like, maybe if something's not going right for Seattle in a game, head right to that concession point, and just stand there.
Maybe if I want to change their luck.
All right. So the last play that we haven't discussed on here on our list, and this one actually for me was the first play when I proposed this exercise to you that popped into my head. And that's big play Babs stops
And I
Romo.
can't believe I didn't think of this one.
This one for me just stands out so vividly because this was the year following the loss to the Steelers in the Super Bowl, and people still thought the Seattle team was the best team in the NFC that year. They had obviously had a bunch of injuries. Hasselbeck had been hurt for a period of time. And this game was so tooth and nail. And this was Romo's like coming out party. He was, the next great quarterback, and Bill Parcells had found him, and they'd benched Drew Bledsoe halfway through the year, who they're paying a lot of money to. And they never removed Romo from holding field goals because that had been his primary duty all year. And they were, I believe, on there was a field goal attempt from the right hash on the 7-yard line. And you just watch him put the ball down and it just slides out. And the kicker, funny enough, was Dramatica, and he didn't know what to do. He wasn't going to help. And I saw Romo come around that edge and I went, he's going to run this in for a flipping touchdown, and they're going to lose the game because he's going to score a touchdown instead of a field goal. And you see Jordan Babineau bend that corner and come around and just all out dive. And I think the one thing fans don't realize on this is Romo was about 6 inches away from getting a first down, because they could still get a first down and be first and goal on this play.
Yep.
And then he hits the ground, ball pops out, Grant Wistrom picks it up, and that ends that playoff game. But this to me is just such a not talked about enough iconic moment in some respects for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and it's one of those, as you mentioned, that the thing that's crazy about it is it's the first down, and no matter how many times I watch this play, similarly to the Russ to Tyler touchdown against the Rams, I can't believe that it wasn't a first down. Like when you see Romo start to run, you see how far Babineau is behind. Like for him to get there and make up that amount of ground and then tackle him exactly the way he did to basically come up 6 inches short of what would have been, first and goal, and they certainly would have most likely scored. And my vantage point live, again, was from that opposite corner. And so I'm looking down that goal line at this play. And so Romo's running away from me and Babineau's chasing. And so it just looked like it was wide open. In the moment, I thought he walks into the end zone. I still can't believe he got there. It's amazing. Is this the same season where we also played the Cowboys at home in the regular season, and it was or was it the year before? Because
that was the year before where Babineau had the pick on the sideline and got some field goal range. That was the year we went to the Super Bowl.
Then they sprinted out. It's pouring rain. They sprint out for the Josh Brown 54-yard field goal. Yeah.
But there's another play
that absolutely, that was insane. That could have been on the list as well. Yeah.
So the thing we'll do now, guys, so that's me and Dan's list. We brought up the images for you. It was a, really kind of cool exercise for us to go back through Seahawks history and think of some things that, and without going and researching, just things that we know as us for Seahawks fans came to mind. But the cool thing that's been going on is while me and Dan have been talking is you guys have been putting in your own comments and plays that weren't mentioned that are actually, kind of cool ones as well. And so we're going to go through some of these. So I'm going to bring this on right now, Dan, from Steph. And he goes, the NFC Championship was wild fake field goal and John Ryan to Gary Gilliam that kind of got them going in that game. I totally forgot that play, to be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great one. And it became a meme. The picture of John wasn't the most flattering picture that he's ever taken, but I'm sure he wouldn't take it back. It was a big moment in his career.
But you know what's funny about that too now that I think about that particular play is, do you know what John Ryan did after he completed the pass?
I don't recall.
He turns to the Packers bench and does the championship belt to Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, that's so John Ryan.
And I was like, that's awesome. That to me is just what makes John Ryan such a, hero amongst Seahawk fans is, he was, really, really cool that way and did some great things like that. Here's one from the Mad Respect. Yeah. Craig ducking Derek Thomas's sack for the 1,000th time and hitting Skenezy for the winning TD at Arrowhead or Earl Thomas's sideline to sideline rundown and punch out against the Rams for the one for a touchback.
Yeah, these both came up before we went live when we were kind of talking about sort of honorable mention plays we didn't think about. The amazing thing about that Scansy one is, as everyone probably remembers, Derek Thomas had 7 sacks in that game. Like that was an all-time record or tied an all-time record. And the 8th sack would have broken it, if I recall. And he had Craig dead to rights, had him in his arms, and Craig wiggles out of it. And ends up finding Paul Scansy in the end zone for the touchdown in a game that they had no business winning.
Oh yeah, none whatsoever.
And then the Earl one we came up with too, because we were talking about like there's got to be something in here for Earl. And John McGrath mentioned just a moment ago too. He's like, not all these plays that are iconic have to be in the Seahawks' favor. And the one you thought of was Earl giving Pete the bird, but the karate chop right on the 1-inch line, basically, to knock that ball out was pretty amazing too.
So here's one from Jonathan King. He goes, Earl jumping over Jimmy Graham to bat the football down 5'8" versus 6'8" was my favorite. Yeah, that was another, great moment and great play there in Seahawk history. We got one from Garrett Greenlee, who was on both of our shows, was in the chat for a while and said, what a duo. What's up, guys? So Garrett, appreciate you popping in. And guys, if you haven't already, go into the YouTube channel. There is an episode in there that we just did with Garrett, myself and Ryan McMillan. It's a great one talking about the Seahawks offseason. And Dan, I know you recently had him on your show as well. So go over there and check out that one as well. And we've got, here's one, Dan. Chuck H. Great moment was the 4 pick sixes in 84 against Kansas City. And there's another, like, we didn't even mention a Kenny Easley type play or Cortez Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like, that's another whole thing.
And I think Dave Brown had 2 of those 4.
Yes.
Keith Simpson, I think, had 1. And I'd have to remember the other one. But unbelievable. I don't know that it's happened since or might ever happen again. Another play that I thought of is one of my favorite Seahawks plays of all time. There was a sack that Dave Wyman had on John Elway. Where
I've heard him talk about this.
Basically jumped over the offensive lineman and like almost kind of a defensive version of that Steve Largent touchdown that you're remembering against the Raiders, where he jumped and kind of rode the tackle into John Elway. It just really kind of was a sort of a highlight moment of Dave Wyman's career and kind of summed up everything that he was, just reckless, high motor, a reckless abandon, just, played with his hair on fire. It was an awesome play.
The other interesting thing too is we John brought up, not talking about necessarily, they're not always positive. Another one from that era that comes to my mind is Bo Jackson running through Brian Bosworth.
Yeah, John mentioned that one. And I've always defended Boz on that play simply because the angle that he took, I mean, Bo Jackson was a tank. Like,
yes.
He was 220, 225 pounds, and just, he crapped muscle. I'll try to keep it as clean as possible. Like, his muscles had muscles, and taking the angle that he did basically from the side, there was probably not many players in the league that could have even attempted to bring Bo Jackson down. He was going to score on that play no matter what. But the other one from that game that I think stands out to me even more is the one where he just took off and used his speed and hit the corner.
Ended up in the tunnel. Yeah.
Went through the tunnel, did the Evel Knievel thing where he just left the building. What a great game for Bo.
So here's another thing from Garrett came in and he goes, as a Vikings fan, I enjoyed the curse play. I would too. And guys, go over and watch Garrett's stuff on Football Analysis. It's some of my favorite content to watch. He does amazing breakdowns, guys. So go over there and give him a subscription and a follow as well.
I bet Garrett's happy that we didn't choose the Blair Walsh chip shot missed field goal.
There's another one
in the minus 30 degree playoff game at Minnesota. Probably,
or when Cam stripped Adrian Peterson in that game to give us our opportunity to get the lead. That was another good moment. Him and KJ tag teaming on that one.
Yeah.
Here's one from John. He goes, Earl Thomas absolutely blasting Gronk like a heat-seeking missile and breaking up the pass and knocking him out of the game.
Gronk still talks about that play.
and says that caused a lot of his back injuries and stuff going forward, was getting hit by Earl on that play, that it really started his ultimate injury decline with his back, was taking that hit from Earl. So John, that's another great play that, just didn't end up sitting in here for me to pull out instantly, or Dan.
There was another one play that I thought of, and I was going to look it up today. I didn't have time. Maybe somebody can refresh my memory in the comments. But it was a Monday Night Football game in the Kingdom. I think it was Dave Craig to Danny Green, the former UW receiver. And I think at first I thought it was a flea flicker in my memory, but now I think it was he fumbled the football. He lost the ball. Dave Craig did that a lot, right? But the ball, like, he's rolling out and he loses a grip on the ball. The ball bounces back to him, and he throws like a deep pass to Danny Green for a touchdown. That stands out. I mean, there's others. I remember, I think it was maybe that same Houston Texans game where Russ is rolling out to his right and a guy comes into his view and he pump fakes and does the 360. Remember that?
That was Jacksonville. Through the touchdown to Zach Miller in the corner.
Yeah.
That was in 2013. That was the year we went to the Super Bowl and won. He rolls, spins, and then throws that strike to Zach Miller, who toe taps. That was another good one. Here's another one from John. He goes, Harvin taking the kickoff after halftime in the Super Bowl of the house, and then taking any remaining wind out of the Broncos' sails, basically sealing their fate. You could see defeat in Manning's eyes. Yeah, that was when they tried to, hey, we're not going to really kick it to Harvin, but we're going to screw up our own kickoff team by the fact we're going to pooch this. And it bounced perfectly for him. So that's another really good one.
Was that the moment for you? Was that the moment for you when you knew the game was over? Because for me, it wasn't.
For me, the moment I knew the game was over, it wasn't that play. It was Curse's touchdown.
Yeah, same. That was
where he bounced off everybody and scored. And I was like, they've given up. And there was actually a play earlier in that.
Yeah, that's when the tears came.
That, for me, a point where I thought Seattle was going to win the game. And I wasn't 100% sure, but I could see. And it was an offensive play. It was when Doug Baldwin put Champ Bailey on roller skates in the slot and ran the fade down the sideline. And Bailey just catches up enough to him to push him out of bounds. Yeah. But he got so much separation. I went, yeah, if Doug Baldwin's just shaking Champ Bailey and taking off, and don't get me wrong, Doug did that to a lot of people, but it was just those type of plays where I was like, there's something different. They're just clicking. Everything is clicking. And at points in that season, the defense obviously was, what it was, a Hall of Fame level defense in its own right. But the offense always had trouble sometimes getting going. And that game, they seemed to kind of get going right away. So here's another one. MWM comes in here. He goes, Metcalf chasing down Baker was a recent play that stands out. Yeah, that's definitely one that stands out. And then I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. Always good to have you in the chat, man. He goes, not an impactful play, but Averill and Bennett putting Rams punter Johnny Hekker back in his place in 2015 always makes me laugh.
Yeah, that was
I was so mad at Hekker when he did that, because all that went through my mind is Averill lands wrong and he tears something, and it's such a dumb play and such an unnecessary play. Averill's not doing anything. He's literally just minding his own business. And for you as a kicker to take that shot on a defensive lineman, I had no, and the fact the ref had to get involved and protect Johnny Hekker, I was like, I would have loved to have just seen one of them tee off and just drill him.
Yeah. Are we going to do a 10 worst plays in Seahawks history show?
I think we should. Dan. I think that'd be an interesting, or maybe 10 most controversial Seahawk plays. I think we could almost get 10 of those.
Yeah.
So let's see. Are there any other ones that are in here? Oh, this is another good one from John when Chancellor jumped over the entire O-line to block the field goal twice. He did it twice. That was the insane thing.
Yeah.
Another one, Bennett riding the bike after winning and giving fans just giving high fives to all the fans. That's the thing that's so cool about this, Dan, and this team, now that we've had a chance to look back on the history of it a little bit, is just for a team that really, you think of it, and again, I can't speak to it because I wasn't alive yet, but up until the late 90s had kind of spurts of winning, but wasn't really known for being an iconic franchise necessarily. And then you listen to Sam Darnold talking on the Rich Eisen show yesterday in the interview. I don't know if you've seen it, but he talks about how through free agency and everything, and talking to guys throughout the league, everyone talks about Seattle now and wanting to be in Seattle and going to Seattle. And that it's like talked about in such a higher position than maybe it was when it, for the majority of its time.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to go back and look at these plays and just see how it's gotten there and the different moments that have helped create that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good time. And just seeing what sticks with you over time,
Yep.
It's just, they've had such a fun history, and the fact that, we get to talk about it now and do this and kind of share it with other people and engage with other fans, and it gets to live on our pages and stay, and we get to look back on those memories sometime in the future. I don't know that there were many plays. It's interesting when you look back at 2024, like, it was an excellent season of Mike McDonald's first year. They win 10 games. They damn near make the playoffs, but there aren't a lot of plays that stand out. I don't think there are any plays from the 2024 season. Let me put it this way: that if we do this show 5 years from now, we're not going to be talking about them. Right.
I would say there's one for me that stands out, and that's Leonard Williams' interception versus the Jets.
It's the Jets.
That's the one that stands out for me. And then the year before, in 2023, Pete's last season, there's really two plays that stand out for me in that year. And one is Devin Witherspoon chucking Pittsburgh Steelers running back Warren out of bounds. It's in our intro video. Like, that to me was a moment that stood out, a play where he just takes him. And that was when you saw the, aggression and everything of Witherspoon. We all kind of said, like, yeah, this dude could have played with the LOB and he would have fit right in. And then obviously the other one is JSN's catch over the shoulder versus the Eagles. That probably is the other play for me that stands out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, that's the thing that's interesting there. Even that 2020 season where we, had all of COVID, there weren't really any iconic plays in that season myself that I think of and go like, yeah, wow. Like, maybe the goal line stand versus New England, but like outside of that, there wasn't anything, so, and the crazy thing here is we haven't listed one play from Bobby Wagner. And yet it's interesting to me that none of Bobby's plays stand out. Now that I think about it, there are a couple that do stand out with Bobby. One being his pick six that he had
against the Rams.
Yeah.
It was like 95 yards or something like that. It was deep in the red zone. Yeah, that came to mind too. Sort of sealed that game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was just Bobby's career, though. It was like he didn't always make the flashy play. He just made the play. He made the most important play, most of the time. So how he did it.
Yeah. So, guys, that kind of wraps up this show for me and Dan. It's a little bit of a shorter live show today. But Dan, what do you have going on at Seahawks Forever and your other channel with Michael Thompson, a good friend of mine as well, Mariners Forever? What do you guys got going on?
Yeah, I screwed up. I didn't mean to do both Twitter handles down there, but yeah, we just uploaded the second episode today, Michael and I, on Mariners Forever. You can subscribe to that on YouTube, and it's on all the audio platforms as well, talking about, why isn't Cole Young in the lineup yet? When are they going to call him up? Is there cause for concern with George Kirby after his first two starts off the injured list? And then taking a look ahead, as Michael does so well, at some of the top prospects. Maybe the Mariners are eyeing that number 3 pick. I've got a bonus episode. That's a weekly show, but got a bonus episode that'll be hitting on Sunday where we react to Keith Law's mid-season top 50, 5 Mariners in that list, including a couple of guys that weren't even in his preseason top 100. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to do a live show, just kind of recapping the first week of OTAs and sort of a what they're saying look at some of the feedback that we're getting out of there as we head towards mandatory minicamp in a couple of weeks. And then the Seahawks are going to unveil next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think, the 2nd through the 5th, their top 50 players of all time. And so it occurred to me today that I might hunker down over the next 24 hours and put my own list together and try to beat them to it, and then look and see kind of how they compare at the end of it, and then wrap it all up with some reaction and see what they come up with, And so just, this time of year, coming up with some of those ideas, having on guests, talking about specific aspects of the team. So daily content, check it out.
Yeah, guys. So with that being said, we're going to, on this side, we're doing a show with Corbin Smith later that we're going to record. and it'll be out over this weekend. We're going to talk to Corbin, ask him what he's seen at OTAs and if he's heard anything. I know the media hasn't necessarily been allowed in, but maybe Corbin's got some insight that's carried on there. Check out our show that we did earlier this week with Garrett Greenlee that came on and did that. And then we'll be back next week, guys, with some more guests, some more topics, probably do some positional breakdowns, look at this team and see how these camp battles may shape up at each position group. But as for myself and for Dan, go Hawks.